What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Big Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Brinson. I'm your host. It's a Brady Quinn football show.
Will, are you okay?
I'm great.
Looks like you get a lot of sun lately.
Well, I'm laughing. I'm red because I'm laughing. I'm laughing hysterically because you made a face. You look like you look like you just like won a football game, or like Notre Dame won. Like somebody from Notre Dame won the Heisman. That's how you look. You look, or you look like you haven't done this podcast in 2 weeks. I don't know. Like you look excited to be here.
Has it been 2 weeks?
No. Well, we missed last week. It's okay.
That's what I'm saying, man. I'm excited to be back. Excited to be with you, Will. Obviously, Billy too, behind the scenes. I got to talk to Billy before, so yeah, it's been a little couple weeks now since we've gotten together.
So Olivia Newton-John wrote a famous song called "Let's Get Fiscal."
That's right.
It's about the tax year. It's she was big into write-offs and everything. Unfortunately, you don't get a write-off this week because the Jets lost. You see the big Bills helmet behind Brady, but still,
What?
Boom. Roasted.
We're trying to make more of this than it actually is. Here's where we're at with the Jets.
I was actually going to segue to the other helmet below you, which is the San Francisco. They lost to the Bills to your right.
Right.
Below the Bills helmet is a Niners.
So we're not going to talk about the Jets Bills at all. You just brought up for no reason, then you want to move on.
It was a literal segue down to the 49ers helmet below that. I was just making fun of Billy for calling it a physical year. Is what I was going to do.
It was a Freudian slip. In all seriousness, though, like, give Mike White a lot of props. He was getting some body blows in that game.
Dude.
I mean, he looked like Rocky out there, right? And Apollo Creed or Mr. T or whoever else would have. Ivan Drago, just body shots all day to him early. But he's played well. He has played well. I'm not sure what's going to happen now this week. Zach Wilson's been elevated to number 2, which you got to ask yourself, why hasn't he been number 2 all along? What's transpired or what's changed since they benched him in the first place?
Okay, actually, we'll stick for the Jets for the moment. Because I am curious. Do you think that in that time period that Zach Wilson has been benched and Mike White has taken over and everyone on the team is wearing I love Mike White t-shirts and Garrett Wilson's out here in the streets talking to reporters thank God we have a human who can get me the football. He's not, that's a paraphrasing, but he's kicked Zach Wilson under the bus multiple times. Everyone is praising Mike White. This team's going to war for Mike White. Is there something that Zach Wilson, as a young quarterback on this team, and because you've been there, not that you were a Zach Wilson type, but you've been there in that dealing with a veteran, battling in season. Is there something he could have done in the locker room over the last few weeks to change everyone's minds, or is he just where he is until next season or forever?
Yeah, that was really clunky there. That's
where he is. Clunky questions.
Yeah, he's where he is. I mean, I don't think over the past few weeks anyone's really noticed him, probably, to be quite honest. No, it's just the truth of the matter is I think people have been more swept away by the offensive improvement in the passing game with Mike White. At least that's been more my impression of it. And I think this past week was one where probably could have came out of the game depending on the injuries. I mean, I know Jim Nantz and Tony Romo are on the call. Romo, it was the first to break the fact he's got broken ribs, playing with broken ribs. Some call that wild speculation. Other people call that just typical Tony Romo call. I digress.
Also clunky and awkward.
No, I'm just saying,
sure, no, yeah, go for it.
I'm just hey, the guy's got broken ribs out there. I was like, whoa, he does? I was like, did we get that report yet? They're like, no, it was just Tony Romo speculating if he had broken ribs. Anyway, the whole point is, he's playing through getting shot after shot from the Buffalo Bills. And, you're looking at it going this is the sort of thing that wins over a locker room. This is the sort of thing that when you're still fighting in a game, keep your team in that game, it wins over those guys. And now they're calling him an effing soldier, is the quote I saw. So you love to see that. Regardless of, how you feel about the Zach Wilson, Mike White, you love to see anytime players are rallying around their quarterback. And that's what Mike White has brought so far. And I do think they've got a formula to be able to compete with the Bills. When you look at them defensively, the Sauce Gardner, the job he did on Stephon Diggs, the secondary in general. You look at the way they can run the football, control the line of scrimmage. Like, all they need is someone to go to distribute the football as they continue to build on the wide receiver position. So you've got to love the progress they've made. The big question is, they're now not in the playoff picture. Will they be able to win enough to be in the playoffs by the end of the year? And if you look at the last 4 games, it's kind of a toss-up based on how you view these games, how this is all going to play out, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the AFC week 14 was all. I tweeted this and somebody was like, "Thanks, Captain Obvious." I was like, "Well, I mean, what do you want?" I mean, like, if week 14 had gone in a different direction, then the playoff pictures on both sides of the league could be a lot more boring. But because of the way that things broke, all of a sudden you have like multiple teams, the Chargers, the Lions, I mean, the Jaguars, the Panthers that are suddenly like in the, are we not doing in the hunt now? Or CBS doing in the hunt? Because Monday Night Football changed it. Like they went with like up in here or something, or you're not gonna play along with this. Okay, all right, fine.
I don't know what Monday Night Football went with. I'm not like one to get into all of that. I just typically see the in the hunt.
I know Joe Buck was complaining that in the hunt is the only thing we have, and he was like, I want something else. So you're just not okay. Oh, cool. You're in the office.
What would you rather?
So we're not going to play along. I see.
Like
okay,
on the prowl.
There we go. Now we're talking.
I mean,
I want Jim Nantz saying on the prowl on Sunday.
On the prowl.
On the prowl. But it's only, but it can only be cat teams who are on the prowl.
Well, I'm gonna say there's
Lions, Panthers, Jaguars.
You've got a lot who are on the prowl.
On the prowl.
In pursuit, hot pursuit. I'm not sure maybe that goes to the Cowboys, but they're already in, so I can't really use that.
No. They oh my God, they changed.
The Jets are hot pursuit. Maybe they're on their tail. I don't know.
I hate you.
Trying to. That's like a.
I guess you don't watch Monday Night Football. All right, it's cool. I mean, it's fine. No big deal.
I watch Monday Night Football. I usually don't always have the sound on when I'm watching a game. I've got other things going on.
It's a graphic that they put up on the television that you would notice.
I'm sorry I didn't notice the graphic that was a variation from every other in the hunt that's out there when it comes in the playoffs.
Then Fox did something else too, and I'm asking CBS. I'm saying we should come up with it's sniffing around is what they are. Oof. I don't know about that one.
It was like a frat party.
Jesus. It is. I have a picture of it.
Miami in the 80s. Ooh.
They were the Commanders, Lions, Falcons, Panthers, and Saints were sniffing around on December 5th on Monday Night Football, according to Joe Buck. I don't know about that. I love it. I think we stay within the hunt.
Closing the gap? Closing the gap?
Closing the gap.
No. Not closing the gap? Okay.
All right. Let's go to the 49ers to talk about Brock Purdy. That was a poorly orchestrated tangent. I apologize. Most of them are. Brock Purdy. Okay, let me ask you this. You are, what are you, 30, 42, 40, 43?
Yep, in my 40s, 38.
38. Brady Quinn, you're, let's say, you jump in a time machine. You go back 14 years. You're 24 years old in your athletic prime. You're like, doing your commercials, driving your Hummer around. You get dropped into the modern day 49ers offense. How would you play?
I'd love it.
You'd be great, wouldn't you?
I think most quarterbacks are great in that system. I mean, Nick Mullins, it's one of the reasons why the Vikings traded for him. CJ Beathard, Jimmy Garoppolo has most success with Kyle Shanahan. Not that he really played much with New England, but I think when you look at him in there and
he's been to a Super Bowl and almost won it, and then almost went to a second one.
Yeah, you look at Matt Schaub has been in a Pro Bowl caliber, right? RG3 wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. You start going through the list of quarterbacks who've had like career years. Even Brian Hoyer, I think one of his best years was in Cleveland.
Dude, right? 2014, Brian Hoyer and the Browns were leading the AFC North until Alex Mack broke his leg.
Yeah.
Matt Schaub led the league in passing yards. Matt Schaub.
So if you really want me to dive into like the deep history of Kyle and what makes him so special is he grew up on basically from his dad. I think everyone knows that, but it's more of how he was trained. So he would be responsible for drawing the scout team cards at a very, very young age. And so what he started to learn was really defenses and how they would align to certain personnels, to certain formations. And so from that, he then knew and could kind of figure out and predict, and this is more has to do with the running game, the exact look he wanted you to get into. He knows basically every single game he walks into how he wants to get you in a certain defensive set so he can run the football and find the best angles. And as long as you guys execute, there's going to be a lot of room to run there. And that's what you see in almost every one of his offenses. They always can run the football. It's like Christian McCaffrey or when it was Jeff Wilson or Raheem Mostert or whoever you want to talk about.
Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, Elijah Mitchell. Every one of those guys, and in recent history, like whatever running backs you want to talk about that he's had, they're getting to the second level. Like they're getting to the second level, body on body, and it's basically you trying to make that forced defender, the extra defender miss. And that's all you can ask for as a running back. And he does as good of a job of anyone in doing that. And you could say week by week, like break down the film and you could see it. So, whoa. Am I still here?
Yeah. I was hoping you wouldn't notice and just keep talking because that was a really good Kyle Shanahan tangent you were on.
Yeah,
we got HQ. You've been replaced by HQ.
I don't know what's happening? Yeah. I'm back. That's kind of cool. I wonder if I could like get that in my normal life.
So
you know?
This gives me a nice opportunity, not to interrupt, but just to sort of like reset it. You pointed out when he was originally came in, he started working for his dad, obviously. Before he was even an offensive coordinator for his dad. And you're saying that he would draw up the
scout team cards.
Right. So it's, I guess I don't think this is a direct one-to-one comparison, but like, I think a lot of people don't realize that Tom Brady became a much better quarterback because he worked with Bill Belichick, because Belichick was showing him what the defenses were going to present. Is that sort of a similar comp to what, like, in the sense that, like,
I would credit every New England coach that I had in them teaching the game. Like that was the biggest thing is, and I think it's one of the reasons why they've all gotten head coaching jobs because they end up being great teachers. Like they can walk into an interview and you can ask them, put them on the board and they can go boom, 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 boom. Like here's offensively what, we like or what this does. Defensively, this is the kind of style of defense we run. This is why. Here are our strengths. Here are our weaknesses. Here's how you exploit it. Like they can go about, creating those schemes to do that. And that's what the entire system is all about. It doesn't take into account quite as much. Like if you look at a West Coast offense, it doesn't take into account quite as much like the timing and rhythm in the passing game with the footwork and that coinciding with the footwork of the receivers. A lot of the concepts that like I remember running back, whether it was with Charlie Weiss or Josh McDaniels, yes, you had your 7-step or 5-step drops, whatever the case was, but you kind of had to find the rhythm within that play. Like you couldn't just group a bunch of the drop back quarterbacks, or drop back plays into this category of plays and say, oh, your footwork's the same for all of them. It wasn't. And it's like that too in the West Coast offense to a degree. I mean, sometimes you have to, and especially depending on who you're throwing to. Like there'd be times when you'd have to throw 5 and plant to your first read. And depending on who that guy was running that skinny post or that bang A post, like you're going to have to chop that down pretty quick because that dude's so fast. He's already at his cut point or his break point, and the ball's already got to be out. Otherwise, you're late. You're throwing behind or that window's closed. So, every offense is different. One of the things I always appreciated, I think, about like that with the New England offense was they did a great job of preparing their quarterbacks to understand exactly what you're getting from the defense and understanding the defense's weaknesses and how you can exploit that. Now, in saying that, that makes it a much more cerebral game, and it means after the snap of the football, you're really confirming everything you saw before the snap of the football if you already don't know before the snap, meaning because of your empty formation and you displace a running back or tight end all the way on the outside, based on who's across from him, whether it's man or zone. And then from there, you start looking at the safety rotation and then what the front looks like and who's in the box, who's not in the box to start to discern what type of zone coverage it is or man coverage it would be if that's the case. So, all those things are things that, is common to New England, but other staffs do it too. Kyle Shanahan obviously does that too, even though he doesn't come from that tree. But you look at the way he knows how to kind of align things based on the personnel groupings. I think the hardest thing for him is early in games, just figuring out how teams are going to play George Kittle, how teams are going to play Christian McCaffrey, and I would have said Deebo Samuel before his injury, which it seems like he's going to be out the rest of the regular season now. But even him, like, how are they going to play him when Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey are in the game at the same time and they're both in the backfield at the same time, right? Those are things that sometimes teams will play them the same, sometimes they'll play them different. But that's really, I think, the only question marks he has going into games. It's not what he wants to run and how he's going to run it. It's how he gets to those run plays and how he gets to those plays to set things up off one another.
So, man, because I mean, like, you've obviously spent time with Kyle. I've spent some time with Kyle Shanahan, not a lot. I think it was actually with you. But like, the guy, by all accounts, is. I guess what I'm trying to say is it goes. We were like, oh, he's a quarterback guru, like offensive mastermind. But it's like, by all accounts, if you spend any time with Kyle Shanahan, you come away going, oh my God, like, not like this guy, like, just like he has such a mastery of what he wants to see from, like you're saying, he knows what he's trying to get to. It's not, and that's what's cool about that offense is it's actually offensive in terms of its approach and trying to. It's sort of like I was watching the Remembering Mike Leach thing on SEC Network last night, and he taught a modern football and like a warfare class at Washington State. But the idea is like,
and at Mississippi State, by the way, they brought it to Starkville.
Because oh, really?
Of that.
I didn't know that. It's modern football and insurgent warfare was the class, and it's like, but that is the literal definition of offensive. You are attempting. And I think that kind of gets lost sometimes is that Kyle Shanahan is on the attack and trying to get your defense in a position. I mean, all offenses are, but like, I think it sort of gets lost in the discussion of his offense.
Yeah, I think it gets lost too because they haven't won that Super Bowl. They haven't had that sort of success. Like Sean McVay gets that title because of the manner in which he explains it to the media, his relationship with the media, and the fact that they've been now to 2 Super Bowls and they won one in a short time as a head coach. And you have to look at it and say, it's pretty incredible what Kyle Shanahan's done, no matter who his quarterback is. I just, that's a guy that you look at and go, yeah, every quarterback wished he could have played for Kyle Shanahan. Because the thing that I think he does the best, and not a lot of, coaches get enough credit for this, and this is probably the single most important job, is not like trying to make a quarterback something he's not. If you look at the success right now of Brock Purdy, what he's doing with this offense, he's played great. His one start, the spot work before that, he's played great. He hasn't been asked to do a ton either. And even when you go back and you look at like the touchdown pass before the end of the half, right? It's a 2-minute drive. Like one of the things you don't want to do to complicate things for a young quarterback who doesn't have a lot of experience, especially a rookie in this case, is you don't want him to have to read through a big progression. Maybe you could say, all right, he can have a full field progression. That's fine. But you don't want to get too caught up in like trying to read coverage and complicating it. There's sometimes you'll have things called coverage reads, meaning based on the coverage, it's going to dictate how you go about reading that play. It's not just like 1 high, 2 high, right? Where if it's a single high safety, I'm going to read this side. If it's 2 high safety, I'll read that side. There's simple plays that are drawn up like that. There's some that are like very coverage specific because, hey, this route might break into a post instead of maybe it's just a normal go route if it's cover 4 based on what number 2 is doing. So there's all sorts of different things that like complicate some of your reads. What did he do? A double move. How easy is that? You basically sit back and say, look, if the shot's there taken, I want you to keep your eyes down the middle of the field, hold the middle field safety. I want you to look at the top of your drop over at the corner if he's playing off. If he's playing off, give him a good pump because his eyes are going to be on you and then toss it deep. How hard is that? Like literally, like you practice doing that in high school, junior high sometimes. A double move. You're already taking a variation of what you already were throwing in that game, which were deep curls, and you're basically getting your receiver to chop his feet at that same move point and then move downfield. And Jamel Dean ended up falling forward, and there lies a touchdown. So it's simple things like that where he plays to the strengths of his quarterbacks to allow them to succeed. He doesn't put too much on their plate, so they play fast, they play decisive, and they end up being good decision makers in that case. When quarterbacks don't know what they're seeing or the game's moving fast, they feel like it's looking gray or fuzzy, that's when you typically make mistakes. So he doesn't put his quarterbacks in that position. And obviously they run the football well too, which takes a lot of pressure off.
Well, that's what people are like. Is this Brock Purdy guy for real? It's like, I mean, like maybe, but it's more about his ability to make good decisions quickly in this system. Like he's soaked up enough, right? I mean,
that's what a lot of quarterback play is. I mean, the number one thing I think when you look at quarterbacks coming from college and the NFL is, are they good decision makers? What's their touchdown interception ratio? when you're watching them on tape, are they understanding when to throw the football away or not throwing in traffic, like those sorts of things? Are they going where the football should be going? However you want to go about dissecting that. So I think he coaches them up in that manner to prepare them to do all of those things. And so far, Brock Purdy's done it, and I think he gives them a shot if he continues to execute this way. And if they play the type of defense they are and run the football they are,
Right.
yeah, of course, they could move on and win a Super Bowl with them or go win a few games in the playoffs. But, you touched on Mike Leach, and I know at some point we'll get to Mike Leach. I'm not going to talk about kind of the relationship I had with him and the stories and all that. A lot of people have told stories. I've kind of shared some on Twitter. The one thing that I feel like that gets overlooked is his impact on the game of football.
Oh, man.
And like he made you and teams defend the entire field, which you see more commonly now in the NFL than ever before. And I think the thing that I appreciated the most that he did as a coach was he stripped away a lot of the complexities of what an offense could be. And he basically said, I only need a little sheet of paper and these concepts, and I'm gonna make sure our execution is the most important thing. And I think the thing that he did that impacted not only like the other coaches that you see now that are head coaches that do a tremendous job, whether it's Lincoln Riley or even Cliff Kingsbury, obviously, who rolled this into getting a head coaching job in the NFL, or anyone else you want to throw into that category, right? I mean, Dave Aranda's in that tree, so many people. The thing that stands out to me is he practiced, like, for example, a corner route into every coverage. So, like, when I was coaching, I was like, if it's cover two and you don't have a guy who's, the typical smash concept, right? You're going to have like a hitch and you have like a corner route. Well, he would coach guys into basically being able to throw that corner route, regardless of what was underneath it, into whatever coverage. And why that's powerful and why that's special is because it prepared quarterbacks when they got to the next level to be able to make throws and shape throws and be passers, not throwers. Whereas some guys, they've never thrown that ball before in their life, so they don't know how to throw it with arc and pace to get over the cornerback in front of the safety and right on the sideline where it needs to be. And so he was able to basically say, like, look, you can throw whatever you want against whatever coverage, any concept. You just got to figure out a way of throwing it. And it's unique to him because he was an artist. He was creative like that as a person, and just how he saw the world, and then how he saw his perspective of the world and applied it to the game of football.
That's a cool tribute. I mean, I think it's I think Leach. I mean, like, I didn't know Leach at all. I love the entire ethos of who Mike Leach was, and like from off field and on field. I think that though is like, it is interesting how his football legacy, which is enormous, it's not diminished, but it's like, it is funny to see how it's like, the crazy pirate, but in reality, like his he and you watch the remembering Mike Leach thing, and Hal Mummy's on there, and they're talking about the actual air raid siren that they had, and that's how they came up with the name of it.
I was there. I went to Lexington. I saw Tim Couch play when Hal Mummy was the head coach and Mike Leach was the OC. That was my first introduction to it, and I remember watching it, going, holy crap, you play football this way? I mean, like where I was from in Columbus in Ohio, like people running the wing T, they're running the power I, like these more traditional offenses. I'm like, you can run 5 wide. You can put 4 guys on one side and 1 guy on the other. I was like, this can happen.
Why were you there like?
No, so my uncle Steve Slates, he played for Kentucky. Oh. So I have family in Lexington. I used to go down, and when Tim Couch was there, of course you want to go see him, especially when he was about to become the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, and I grew up a fan. So my dad, when I was young, would take me down to watch him. So that was like 98, 99. So I was probably in it was 98, 97, somewhere in that ballpark. So I was probably junior high at the time. So I'd go see him, and I eventually was recruited by Kentucky, but it wasn't like that. I mean, it was purely about just the enjoyment of seeing Tim Couch and then watching an offense.
So you watched the air raid in its inception. I didn't know that. I've never heard that story. I mean, were you? I mean, what did Chopper think about the air raid?
Well, the best part was, I think they played like a directional school, and it was like a 2-directional school. It was like Northwest Missouri State University or something like that. And so they hung probably like 60 on them. And I just remember that air raid horn kept going off over and over and over and over again. And you kept seeing all these like Couch for Heisman shirts and everything else. I think I might have bought one at one point. But it was just fun to watch. I mean, it was so unique compared to anything else that was going on in football, not just college football, like in the NFL, everywhere. And now, honestly, like you look at some of the concepts and how they're applied to the NFL, and it's a little different in college because the hashes are wider and the way you can displace players in the field. But a lot of those roots are still there. And I think the confidence now to sit there and say, it's 4th and 1, we're going to throw. Like we're completing a high enough percentage of balls, like we're going to throw the various screens and concepts that are all part of it. I mean, all that should be credited to Mike Leach. But you talk about like the kind of the pirate stuff, the swing your sword. The thing that stood out to me is how he figured out how to stand out. Like he's so unique in the sense of there was no one else who was like him, who talked to the media the way he did, who saw the world the way he did. And, he was at these programs on like the outposts of college football, but he found a way to work with those smaller budgets and work with less to maximize it. I mean, what he did at Texas Tech, what he did even at Washington State, when you think about how competitive that program was during his time there, the Minshew mania, and that whole story of how, I mean, have you ever heard the story of how Gardner Minshew got there?
Minshew was about to be an assistant for Nick Saban, and he ends up like becoming an NFL starter for several years because of Mike Leach.
It literally was a phone call where Mike Leach reached out to him, and he just said to him, he said, "Hey, do you want to lead the country in passing?" He goes, "That's what you're going to do if you come here." And sure enough, Gardner Minshew's like, "Hell yeah!" And he gets there in the summertime. He wins over the team, and the rest is history. And I remember like being a part of that, calling some of those games, and it was so much fun to be around. And it's a part too because like Mike Leach didn't make it about any one player; he made it about the team. He really did in the essence of all of it, and he treated everyone the same. The way he went about talking to them, and treated the media all the same. The way the conversations he'd have with you, but that was what it was struck me the most is like he really did make it more team oriented, and just the way he handled things. But again, it's sad. Thoughts and prayers. Obviously, you send those out to their family and friends. It was just, it was always a pleasure to be around Mike.
Yeah. I mean, I saw somebody. I can't remember. I believe it was like. I think it was somebody with footballscoop.com tweeted this out, but so the College Football Hall of Fame has a requirement of a 60% win percentage to get for coaches to be inducted, and Leach is like 3 W's below that. I mean, we gotta waive that for Mike Leach.
Look, I think there's a lot of things, in regards to whether it's the College Football Hall of Fame or the National Football Foundation, however they go about deciding that. Even some of these awards now that we see, it's like there needs to be more transparency. Every situation and case is unique. And I hope, it's my hope that they find a way of getting rid of that to allow Mike Leach in, because you really can't tell the story of college football and the impact that he's had with his coaching tree and the players and who've become coaches and who've gone on without talking about Mike Leach.
Amen, brother. All right, let's take a quick break. R.I.P. Mike Leach, one of a kind, one of one. And we'll come back and talk a little more football next. So, it's never easy to transition from something like that, but you know what? Like I saw it. Somebody was like, asked Mississippi State, "It's like, are you going to play in the bowl game?" They're like, "Yeah, there's a pirate ship in our bowl game." Yeah. Mike would be furious if we didn't play in this bowl game because he passed. Are you nuts? There's a pirate ship there. Hang a Mike Leach banner from the pirate ship. Cliff Kingsbury played quarterback at Texas Tech. He did he not? Wes Welker was there. My boy Wick Brenner was there. Early 2000s. What a Texas Tech team that was. Michael Crabtree. Oh, remember that game? And I think it was 2008, but I mean, that game against Texas, all-timer. More importantly, though, Cliff Kingsbury now under fire in Arizona. What happens with this Kyler injury? I'm of the belief that the Kyler injury is going to save everyone's job in Arizona.
That's one way of looking at it. I mean, my first thing would be you can't make the decision you made in the offseason with Steve Keim, Cliff Kingsbury, and Kyler Murray, and then not be able to, swallow a bad season. I mean, you didn't have your best player in your entire team the first 6 games. If you looked at their schedule too, I think I pegged them at 2-4, 3-3 at best. I think they ended up 2-4. So that was about what it was going to be. And you lost Chandler Jones in the offseason. Their defense has had issues getting pressure. I mean, Zach Allen looked great this past week, but it hasn't really been like that the entire year. They've given up a bunch of chunks and plays in the passing game. So, there were some holes there to fill, and they've been snake bitten the whole year. I mean, Kyler already missed some time this season. Their offensive line has been banged up at times. Obviously, Hopkins was out, but It's not just him. Hollywood Brown was out for a period of time too. That's why they went and got Robbie Anderson. The backfield's been banged up. I mean, you can just look throughout. Zach Ertz is no longer there. I mean, literally, like, I know we feel like when we talk about injuries, like it's making excuses because other teams battle through injuries. Those teams, though, are so stacked, and the roster is so much better suited to be able to withstand that. The Cardinals are not. They're not that roster to be able to withstand that. So I think when you factor it all in there, if Michael Bidwell wants to just pull the rug from out underneath everyone and blow this thing up, I just think it's going to set back the organization where you give this thing another year and you see if you can continue to build on the roster, get more depth there, but see what you can create from all this and give it another year. And then you can, evaluate where you're at that point in time. To me, I think that's the best course of action because obviously the year hasn't gone the way they wanted it to, and they're not going to be able to finish the way they want to or even have a shot at the end. But it also didn't go the way it wanted to for the Rams either. If this is all about Michael Bidwell being so mad that two teams from the NFC West were in the playoffs last year and it being that whole story and they, obviously weren't able to win their wild card round. If it's really about that, then how are you going to view this year? Because Seattle's now starting to slide back. You're looking at a Rams team that's not going to the playoffs. And then you've got a San Francisco team that's without its, starting quarterback. I'm referring to Jimmy Garoppolo, not Trey Lance. Right. But it was without Jimmy Garoppolo, having started rookie, and we don't know how it's going to impact their playoff hopes. So I don't know. Hopefully he's not going to live in the moment. Hopefully he's a little more patient, with all this working itself out.
So you don't want him to be as impatient as Ryan Wilson, who wants to fire Ryan Wilson. Ryan Wilson wants to fire Cliff, fire Keim, and cut Kyler, which is like
astronomical dead cap hit and all that. It's just
well, you when I say you, I mean Michael Bidwell. Like, let's say Ryan Wilson is Michael Bidwell. He's like, just rip the Band-Aid off, get rid of him, just figure it out. Well, if you do that, you have a massive dead cap hit. You just can't. Kyler's uncuttable. Two, you now are like spending $30 million on a GM and a head coach you're not paying for, which means you are inherently, like, regardless of what you believe in your head, you're inherently going to spend less on the next guys, which means you're not going to get you're not going to get high quality guys. And then you're just gonna be stuck in the same cycle.
Well, I also think you have to learn from your mistakes. And I'm not taking the small sample size with what Steve Wilkes has done in Carolina is saying that, moving on from him was a mistake. He could have learned a lot from that experience and now applied it in Carolina, but they're 4-4 since starting off 1-4 and firing Matt Rule. Like, he's done a heck of a job now giving Carolina hope of what that may be. And they should give him a realistic look to be the head coach, starting in 2023. I don't know how it's going to work out, but you moved on from him because you had a bad season. And I know it was, maybe historically bad for the franchise, but, Josh Rosen struggled. You're starting a rookie quarterback. Clearly that played a factor into all of it too. I want to say
your GM wasn't there for 6 months because he was suspended.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things you could chalk that up to. And I think you made that swift decision. You bought into going into hey, we're drafting Kyler Murray number 1 overall, Cliff Kingsbury, him. They have a rapport. He can build an offense that will suit him. You bought into it, then you extended him. So are you really going to go back on the decision that you just made like 9 months ago? It just, to me, let cooler heads prevail. Let the dust settle in the desert after the season and move on to 2023.
So what are we just finished week 14.
Yeah.
Right. If you go back to 2021, week 14, I'm just sort of, spitballing here. The Cardinals were 11-6. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, how does that work? Oh, the Cardinals finished 11-6. I was hoping they would give me the actual record after week 14. They started 8-0 last year. And look, I'm not saying that last year's start is indicative of who Cliff Kingsbury is as a head coach or Kyler is as a quarterback. And they finished poorly. Like, they finished 3-6. But they started 8-0. And when they were 8-0, people were talking about Kyler for MVP. People were talking about, can the Cardinals win the Super Bowl? And that's it's like a year. It's less than 18 months ago. So you can't just panic and just fire everybody because of a bad 18 months. I mean, after giving them all extensions, if you do that, you are kind of an idiot, right?
Well, I'm not going to call him that, but
I want you to call Ryan Wilson an idiot. Is what I want you to do.
I'm not calling anyone an idiot, but you do have to like look back at your own decision making and have to. Well, yeah, that's because rightfully so. But
fair.
You do have to look at your own decision making at some point and hope that you're sharpening yourself by looking back and saying, okay, this is the mistake I made last time. I'm not going to make the same mistake this time. I also think you hired a first time head coach in Steve Wilkes, right? Well, then look at you're hiring a first-time NFL head coach in Cliff Kingsbury. So give him some time too to grow into the position where they've continually gotten better every year. Like every single year, you could look back and go, "We've got better, taking that step." This is the first year where maybe you take a step back. But again, I think if you blow the whole thing up, then you might be taking like 3 steps back. And who knows if you ever get back up to being a team that's going to compete, in that division with the way it looked at least last year. I mean, I would actually take more away from that, saying, "Hey, we were a playoff team amongst." A couple teams that, ended up also going as well. There's a lot more we can take from that and apply it moving forward. Just don't hit the panic button now. Because I feel like when you do that, it takes a long time to build it back up. And after, I remember being a 10-6 team in Cleveland my rookie year. And then the next year, us being injury ridden, I think we went 4-12 the next year. And then as soon as Randy Lerner blew that thing up, there was never any traction there the rest of the time he was an owner. And then Jimmy Haslam takes it over, and he's never finding any traction. And the problem is because you kind of hit the eject button on this grand plan that everyone pitches to you every year, every other year, and you eject early. It's like you never even got close to going to the destination. And now you got a team that's half built for one general manager or one head coach, and then you got a guy coming in who's trying to clean up the whole mess. It takes a while to turn it over. It takes more than just one offseason.
I'm not saying that Matt Rule will ever be a good or great NFL head coach, but I do think there's something to the fact that he pointed out. I think it was, we talked this, but he was on Peter Schrader's podcast.
So, hey,
he's like, look, he's like, if you told me I had 2.5 years to win, I might have approached things differently. Like David Tepper, just like Jimmy Haslam, hit the eject button, and I do think if you take, I'm not trying to cape up for Cliff Kingsbury. I'm not trying to be a Kingsbury defender here, but I think if you look at 5-10-1 with the rookie of the year in Kyler Murray, 8-8 the next year, 11-6 the next year, that is improvement.
Yeah.
Now they've had a really bad year. I think people just want to fire Cliff Kingsbury. I think people are just like hot to fire Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, they want him to lose. I mean, look, the guy's got it all, right? He's a head coach.
Because he's too good looking. That's the problem.
He's so damn good looking. Like people keep thinking he was in The Notebook. He wasn't. All right, that wasn't him. That was Ryan Gosling. Damn it! Like, will people get this right?
Hey.
And yeah, I mean, it's like, what's the downside? Like the guy's just living a great life. I mean, you know what it was too? I think they saw him in their like war room or whatever house they rented. He was just kicked up, laid back.
That was his house when he's like sitting up with his feet on and like the fireplace going. He's like, draft? I don't care about the draft. I'm just going to sit here and be handsome and watch The Notebook with this less handsome guy, Gosling.
Yeah. And so like ever since then, people are like, God, that guy just got everything. And so they're just jealous. They hate on him, but they need to be patient. I mean, look,
you know what they say, Brady?
What?
The hater's going to hate.
Yeah, they do say that.
Baker Mayfield.
Here's what I'll say quickly just about him too. If anyone spent time around Cliff, they'll know like he's a grinder. Like that dude he's a grinder. He knows ball. He knows what he's trying to get. Unfortunately, like some things just have not worked out for them this year. They should be patient.
Second half of the season's pawing him too, but that's a whole other story. Baker Mayfield. Once did Cliff Kingsbury chased Baker off? Is that right?
No, well, it's a lot more.
I'm not trying to dive into that, but
I know. He didn't chase him off. The reality is, he was there as a walk-on, which then allowed him to go to Oklahoma and not be penalized to sit out a year. However, that all I believe got reviewed by the NCAA because Texas Tech was going to give him a scholarship in the spring and then tried to block him for transferring.
It worked out for all parties involved. How about that?
Yeah, because then you got a guy named Patrick Mahomes who came in, eventually.
Baker got claimed by the Rams, and it's like a crazy. I mean, I can't get over the Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football.
Oh, okay. Let me say the beginning of the game, as much as they were like freaking out about like he was 3 for 6 at one point, they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he just completed that in route." And you're like, I mean, he's playing the NFL. Like he's taking his team to the playoffs. Like he's like, what are we talking? He's the number 1 overall draft pick. Like
he won the
he's
Heisman.
capable of making these throws. I'm like, why are we freaking out about this? Like he's very capable of doing all of this. And we've seen him do it before too. It just was in a different uniform.
They were treating it like I went out there. They're like, Brinson, can you believe he just completed that pass? It's like he's at this point, he's a veteran NFL quarterback who's completing like a 20-yard pass. It's not like it's not like he had to learn like Spanish.
Chris was freaking out about it. I'm like, okay. Now, once you get to the 2-minute drive, that's where I said to myself, okay, that's unbelievable. Like, that was legit. Granted, Rob Havenstein should have gotten called for a
7 more holding.
holds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would have changed the outcome of the game, but I digress. It's for him to do what he did in that moment. That was special. Like, bottom line, for a guy coming in 2 days prior, that was special. And he deserves a lot of credit for it. By the way, so much so that I'm going to go and say this. The way McVay celebrated, like, that was unlike anything I'd seen from him this entire year. I feel like Baker's kind of rejuvenated him. Like, dare I say, like, I think Baker's the quarterback maybe he needs right now moving forward, not Stafford, who, like, has gotten everything he wanted now. Like, he's got the Super Bowl. He's got, Hall of Fame stats. I mean, Baker's hungry. And, like, he wants to come there and try to go to a Super Bowl and win one. And I kind of look at it and go, I think that might actually revitalize Sean McVay too, with how he sees this. Like, tell me I'm crazy, but I think McVay likes challenges. And he's looking at a guy right now who not a lot of people obviously are high on at this point in his career. If he could build him up to be able to go to a Super Bowl, win one, that puts him in rare company, right? Like 3 Super Bowls. Granted, he's won one, didn't win them all. But if he was to have Baker go to one, that's what Joe Gibbs, Bill Parcells.
Gibbs won one with 3 different starting quarterbacks.
That's what I'm saying is. But let's either go to a Super Bowl with 3 different starting quarterbacks.
Parcells would have had Bledsoe. Did Parcells go with
Sims?
Yeah.
And then
Parcells have 3 different quarterbacks.
Hostetler.
Okay, Sims didn't start.
I'm pretty sure Parcells has been to 3. Gibbs took 3 to 3 different ones.
Mm-hmm.
McVay would be the other one, which is, like, to me, pretty remarkable. Now, granted, like, look, Jared Goff is the number 1 overall pick, Baker Mayfield number 1 overall pick, and then
Matthew Stafford number 1 overall
2
pick.
overall. So it's like,
no, Stafford was 1.
Right. Well, was he 1 overall?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Ryan. I'm thinking of Matt Ryan.
Matt Ryan was 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like, all right, like, it's still though 3 different quarterbacks. That's not that's pretty ridiculous to think about that.
Now I'm trying to, and you're probably right about Parcells. I'm sure you're right about Parcells, but yeah, I mean, if you did that, it'd be insane. The problem is the only issue for that, and I don't think you're wrong. I think Baker by the end of this year will want to stick around in Los Angeles.
The trade-offs. Like, Baker might believe in UFOs. That's okay. Willing to do that. Some people feel like Matt Stafford may have, like, not helping the lady up when she fell off the stage. Like, Baker's not going to do that. He's going to help her up, I think. No.
Okay. This is
where are we at on this?
We don't slander Matthew Stafford on this podcast. That's what we don't do.
Well, I wasn't slandering him. I'm just saying, like,
I think Matthew Stafford was confused and perhaps
Oh, you think he was drunk? It was a bad drunk reaction.
I think it was a oh God, like, somebody help. Like, I don't know that Brady Quinn necessarily, leaps for the lady falling off the stage.
I would have dove down there.
I don't know.
100%.
You might not.
Did I stop when I was back at home to help a guy who, like, literally drove off the road into a ditch? Now, when I got up to the car, I realized that there may have been some things going on inside the car that caused that to happen. But I did try to help them, although they didn't want any help. And I tried to advise them not to drive the car any further into this little ravine they were in. However, they did not listen.
Wait, what? You should stop driving into the ravine.
I was like, well, you're going to be more stuck because you're already pretty stuck. But, like, if you drive that thing forward, you're going to be stuck even more. And sure enough, I asked one last time. I said, do you need me to call an ambulance? Do you need me to call anyone? They said, no, we're good. And I said, okay.
Did they recognize you?
To walk away. I watched them continue to drive more into it and get more stuck. And then water started getting in the car, which they eventually got out. So,
a lot of people don't know that if you drive into a ravine, that you can't drive further into the ravine. No. In a non-metaphorical sense, just a literal sense. It's very, very difficult to drive into a ravine and then further into a ravine unless you're driving a very, very big car.
I was just more, it was a smaller car, and I was curious how they even got into the ravine in the first place. They're obviously driving too fast on an off-ramp, but I digress. I was
allowing your tangent about, I once changed a car in a rainstorm. I changed a tire for a car in a rainstorm for strangers.
There you go. See?
Yeah, how about that?
That's the sort of Billy Brinson stories we need.
Yeah, I'm a man of the people. Yeah, Phil Simms, Hostetler, and Bledsoe. You're right. I was looking it up. Apologies for questioning your football knowledge.
I thought Hostetler, but I wasn't 100% positive.
Yeah.
But anyway, look, by the way, I realize we're like a long way from that, but I don't know. I think Baker brings him a little extra juice. I think he's fired up. He's still headbutting guys without a helmet on. There's something to say about that.
That's stupid.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's the kind of meathead stuff that I think McVay's kind of into.
Okay, let me ask you this. If you were, let's say you're Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this a lot. Like and we even mentioned it, we sort of referenced it with, like you kill to go back in time and play for Kyle Shanahan in your career. But like, if you're Baker and you feel like you landed in a spot with McVay that could be where it finally all works out for you, but Matthew Stafford isn't retiring and he's coming back and he's not tradable. I'm just saying, just walk through my hypothetical. He's not retiring. He's coming back to play. Would you, if you're Baker Mayfield, would you consider signing a contract to be the backup in Los Angeles, like a 2-year deal where it's not quarterback in waiting? You don't really know what the deal is. Like, and if you're Matthew Stafford, would you want Baker to sign that? Like, I think those are sort of the problematic logistics with the timing of the contract and all of that the Rams have to deal with.
Yeah, I just get a sense that Matt Stafford's closer to being done than maybe he would be willing to admit. I mean, he played really banged up this season. There's also like an element of like, he got what he wanted. Like, he came to LA to get a Super Bowl. What more does he want at this point in time? He's made a ton of money.
Sure.
And I feel like that's more of a question for like Sean McVay. Like, what does he want? Because if he wants to continue to do this, and obviously he flirted with TV networks for a reason, after the Super Bowl and really contemplated that, he probably wants to be with a guy who's going to come in like
hungry,
rearing to go, like with something to prove, with a gigantic boulder on his shoulder. And that's Baker. So I just, again, maybe this is just in my fantasy world of how I could see this playing out. But I think if you're Baker, yeah, you want to sign to stay there. But you'd also be trying to do that. Maybe you even put it in a clause and be like, look, I'm doing this if Sean's here. If Sean leaves and retires and goes to the TV or something, then all of a sudden it triggers something in my contract where I become a free agent because I'm leaving if that guy's not here.
And I don't think it's crazy to suggest Matthew Stafford walks away. I mean, like we're talking about a spinal contusion, like more
concussion. By the way, I mean, a spinal contusion, concussion, like all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he's 34. I think he still has good football left in him, but I don't know how long it lasts if he has to play behind that offensive line. And can they retool it in the offseason? The run game,
it depends upon if they're going to let Rob Havenstein hold the way he did at the end of that game. If they let that happen,
they flagged him 9 times in that game. Finally, they're like, "We're out of. I can't throw this flag anymore. My arm is hurting me. Just hold, whatever. Do whatever you want." Like,
yeah, just put him in that arm bar like choke thing around his neck. No one calls that anymore.
Right. Someone was talking about that earlier. Anyway, I digress. Micah Parsons, ostensible Defensive Player of the Year. You can Google ostensible after the podcast.
I'm thinking when you said that, Bosa?
Yeah, it's either him or Bosa. I think it's.
Okay.
I would.
Bosa's got more sacks right now, right?
Yeah. I'll look and see what the odds are. I would take Bosa at plus money over Parsons.
Does the injury to Jimmy G play more of a factor too in that, where like the defense is that much more important, and they're technically the number one defense?
That's actually a great piece of analysis by you. And yes, it will factor in. One of the other things too, this year. For MVP, you have to list the voters. Pete Prisco's one. So imagine you're putting your hands in like the fate of Pete Prisco, which is terrifying. You list 5 MVPs and 3 candidates for all the other awards. So whereas before it was 1 vote, and that's going to muddy the waters a little bit with people who go Parsons 1, Bosa 2. Keep it a little closer. It's hard to say exactly what the impact will be. Right now, Parsons minus 260. Bosa plus 170.
Oh, lay some money on Bosa, man. Take the plus value, you still can get it.
100%.
Yeah.
Bosa plus 170 is the move. I think that's a great call on, like, San Francisco is not going to get the 1 seed, but they're going to finish above Dallas and could get as high as the 2 seed. And if they do that with Brock Purdy and McCaffrey comes in and that helps.
Well, yeah, if they win their division, which they're going to win their division.
Yep.
People are going to say Dallas can't say that, really.
People are going to say, how do we reward San Francisco for this success? It won't be coach of the year because there are too many other candidates. It'll be through
DPOY, baby.
DPOY, that's right. Good call.
Say.
All right, so Parsons, ostensible DPOY loser, had this to say about Jalen Hurts. Is it Hurts or the team? It's system and team. Read between the
Between the
lines.
I think he's put some bulletin board material out there. That's what I think. Because I'll say this about Jalen Hurts. He's like it's like machine learning, right? Like they just get smarter and smarter the more opportunities you give it to learn. Like that's how he is as a quarterback. Like the more reps he gets, the better he gets. It's been like that since Alabama to Oklahoma to the Eagles, and that's how it is now. And he's in a great system for him. I'm not saying he's going to be able to excel in everyone's system, but I do think, in this system, it's not just the system. It is Jalen Hurts. It's his skill set and how they're able to utilize his skill set. So, and look, they're as talented as it gets at wide receiver and on the offensive line and in their backfield and their defense now with the additions they made, especially the veteran guys who I think are stopping the run better the past 4 games. But I just look at it and I go, yeah, like I don't think that's just a system. I think that's Jalen Hurts and the improvements he's made.
So here's my theory on Hurts. Because Jalen Hurts has been prominent in our lives since recruiting, obviously, and then Bama, and then Oklahoma, and all of these teams that were on our radar. I'll finish this and we'll get out of here. People think that he's like 42 years old. He's younger than Stetson Bennett. He's 24. There's room to grow. Yeah. And maybe we can talk about that next week on the Brady Quinn football show. By the way, Micah Parsons, you should worry about the Jaguars and not the Eagles because you got them on deck here.
AFC Offensive Player of the Week, Trevor Lawrence, right?
Yeah, baby. Trevor Lawrence back. Ryan Wilson, you lost that one too, pal. All right, Brady. Always a pleasure. You look sharp. You look fantastic. Tell Pete I said to go bleep himself. See you later.
I will. I'm
going to tell him that. Please tell him that. All right, man.
I will.
See you, bud. Bye.